5:01. I think we should go ahead and get started.
All right. I love the promptness. Like, let's do it.
Yep. I'll kick it off and I'll introduce you. How about that?
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Stacey Owen from the school's alumni engagement team. Happy New Year. We are really excited to have Ashley Wilcox with us today. She is our Director of Sustainability Initiatives for the School of Business. And we thought it would be a great way to start 2025 to focus on 25 ways we can all be sustainable in the year ahead. Ashley, I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us. And thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to share some ways that we can all be a little bit more sustainable in 2025. So new year, new us, right? So it's time to take on maybe some new habits, embrace some new mindsets. So I'm excited to share ways that we can take individual actions, but also in the different places in which we reside. So I don't want to bury the lead in this whatsoever. I did put this together in a bit of a listicle format, and I'm going to share these things with you after. So we'll share all of these items out afterwards. So instead of burying the lead and starting at 25, I thought I'd just go right in to like number 1 in case anyone has to drop off early. So to get this year started, 2025 is actually all about the year of reducing consumption. Let's see if I can get there we go. If you don't take away anything else of any other tips or tricks or mindsets, the one thing I want you to think about is just how can I reduce my consumption? And that shows up in a variety of ways, from the things that we purchase, the food that we consume, the stuff that we use. We're all about ditching excess for impact this year. And so we're going to dig more into some ways that we can do that at work, at home, but also in thinking about our everyday mindsets and behaviors and how we can lead in that. So number 1 is just straight up think about how you can reduce your own consumption. Okay, at work, let's be honest, this is where we spend a majority of our time. So this is a place where we can actually have a lot of impact. On an individual level, the first thing I would recommend is just find your people, like people who have like-minded values, belief systems, things like that. Starting your own green team or even employee-based resource group can be super helpful in looking at making change at where you are at work. And it doesn't mean you have to take on big challenges. It could simply be, we want to get together and bring our lunch. And we're going to use reusable containers, and we're not going to use single-use plastics. Something as simple as that. Or even, hey, let's try and conduct an audit of our own waste at work. But find your people, their strength in numbers. And believe it or not, this is how a lot of sustainability departments or projects actually get tackled in organizations, especially smaller to medium-sized enterprises with limited resources and capacity. So find your people. Third, practice smart commuting. We'll talk about smart computing in a little bit, but smart commuting, so carpooling. Believe it or not, carpooling can actually reduce an average household by up to a ton of CO2 emissions a year. And so how can you also possibly incentivize that at work? At Wake, I think it's really cool. We've got better parking spaces for people who have carpool passes. But if you find your people, is there a way that you can also incentivize carpooling or alternative transportation as opposed to everyone taking their own vehicles into work, whether that be public transportation or carpooling? How can you practice smart commuting? And then how might you incentivize that at work? What kind of perks or benefits you may be able to implement to reward that sustainable behavior? Number 4, friction-free sustainability. So we always want to choose the path of least resistance when it comes to sustainability. Any single time there is a barrier for us to do anything, we automatically are like, nah, I'm not really going to want to do that thing. So how can you make it easier for people to be more sustainable at work? Something as simple as moving recyclable containers and or trash in places that are easier for people to access might actually increase your ability to recycle at work just by making access to recyclable containers easier. I have seen at some places where they will actually remove waste baskets from underneath desks to get people to think about the waste that they are producing, right? So if you're having to collect it and then maybe take it to another trash can that's in a common area or a place where you're disposing of waste, might make you think a little bit differently about, oh my gosh, how much waste am I producing during the day? And maybe I want to use some things that we can either recycle or reuse again. So friction-free sustainability, how can you just make it easier for people to embrace a habit? Think before you print. I know we're in a digital space right now, and there's still, in my opinion, nothing better than, paper. Sometimes we want to hold on to it. But something as simple as thinking before we print can really actually save resources, not only for the organization, but thinking about those renewable resources of the trees and paper that we're using. If you are going to print, obviously, let's go double-sided if you can. And believe it or not, shift from color to grayscale. That can save energy and also resources in thinking about the inks and things like that that we're also using. So think before you print. Believe it or not, simple behavior changes around this has an opportunity to save around 2.5 trees per employee per year. So like that can be a big impact. And also thinking about how we're reducing our waste. If we're wanting to reduce consumption, how can we reduce waste? So think before you print. Digital minimalism. This one is one of my favorites. Have a deletion policy or default to delete. Sometimes I know it's really hard to let go of emails or certain files, but sitting down maybe once a month and going through your inbox, looking at things that you may have on cloud storage and actually deleting those files and getting rid of them can actually help with energy consumption. So it takes a lot of energy to store those items on servers. Some companies I know have policies that after 60 days, it'll automatically be deleted. But that's something to think about. Digital minimalism, how can we reduce our digital waste? One of the things that I think is really interesting about waste that I want everyone to kind of think about is that we think about throwing things away or, it goes away. When it comes to physical resources, there is no away. It just is removed out of your personal space. So think about all of the waste that we produce, which on average, we produce about 5 pounds of waste a day as an individual. That adds up. So being mindful about how we can reduce some of that waste is not only going to be better for business, but also in thinking about just the planet as a whole, of where is that going? Another thing on the digital side, and this one can be a little controversial, to reduce an energy footprint of online meetings and things like that, or if you've got large calls or conferences, something as simple as turning off your camera can actually reduce the energy input that's needed for that meeting. So it's a small, and I know sometimes that may turn off some people on if we need to have human connection, but something as simple as just turning off your video while streaming can actually reduce the energy footprint of that video call as well. So those are some things for at work that you can do on an individual level. On a greater scale at work, we can think about our policies and procedures or things that we can implement for a larger impact. One of the things we like to think about is corporate events. So how many people are we having? RSVPs, maintaining a really great head count can actually help us reduce food waste. Are we sending invitations via paper, or can we do them digitally instead? Also to that, at corporate events, I know if any of you travel, you do any type of recruiting, we love to give out stuff. And I believe we've referred to it in the past as swag. Our students have informed me that that's no longer the cool term. It's called merch. But rethink the merch or the swag that you are giving out at either events or when you're at an organizational event or marketing materials. So rethink, why do we need this? Do we really need to have it in this format? And so can we switch our wasteful or single-use swag for more reduced consumption items. So thinking about digital gifts, an audiobook, digital text, or even experiences. Those can be way more meaningful and connections than just stuff that's often going to get tossed out. So redefine perks. And also, as I was talking earlier on, how do we incentivize and reward for sustainable behaviors of maybe other employees or the behaviors that we want to see within our organization? And so how I mentioned, those that carpool can get really better parking spots or have access to better parking. Maybe those that are contributing and can show their reduced waste, extra day of PTO. So some ways on how can we reward those behaviors that we're really after that can help the organization as a whole, and also says, hey, we really care about this. Taking a look at catering policies within an organization can be super helpful. So switching to more plant-forward menus is actually great at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And also, how can we support local suppliers or vendors? We love keeping spending within the economy. How can we stimulate our own local economy and keep those dollars in that space? So revisiting our own internal catering policies. Do we only use caterers that are within a specific area? And also, when we do have catering come in, can they use reusable to-go containers? What kinds of things can they offer? Are the plates or any of the utensils that they're providing, can they use silverware and washable, or is it possible to ask for a compostable or things that are actually recyclable? So just some things to think about with food. Food is one of the biggest areas of waste. About 40% of food is wasted before it even gets to our table. And so if there are any ways that we can think about while it is on the table, how can we help reduce it while it's there? Thinking about our procurement practices, right? So this is actually a really great area to make impact when we think about reducing our consumption. And focusing on high impact areas like electronics, furniture, and office supplies. Are we buying high quality? I know sometimes we have the trade-offs between quality and cost, but the things that are really going to last us a longer time and or have the ability that we can have repaired or refurbished as opposed to tossing out and getting brand new. When contracts are getting ready to expire, that's always a really great opportunity for you to start having conversations with other vendors and how and what they can supply, and also asking them, hey, we're looking at including more recyclables or using materials with recyclable content, things like that. What are their policies around, or what are the sources that they're providing you with? So procurement policies are a really great way to make impact organizational wide. And then I think this is an interesting one, and it can be a little bit challenging, but I think it has an opportunity to keep things, I'm going to go to this like circular principle. So looking at cross industry for waste matching. And when I say that, I mean, everybody and every organization, whether it's products, services, no matter what, you produce waste. Is there a way that we can remove that waste from going to landfill and serving a purpose? What value does that waste have for maybe another industry or organization? One of the things that pops into my head is coffee grounds. So a lot of coffee shops will then provide coffee grounds for anyone who wants to use them within their own garden. So is there an opportunity for you to think about the waste that you produce? And it could be something as I've heard of folks within marketing using old marketing supplies like banner stands for within gardeners and nurseries for plants, and like plant stands, or to use as supports and things like that. So as a way to keep materials out of landfill, can we find or partner with another organization or entity to think about how and what we're doing with our waste? So those are some things that work. On an individual level, at home is also where we have a lot of control, right? So food waste, back to that. There's some really cool apps out there that partner with other restaurants, food suppliers, and things like that, that you can tap into, that they will let you know, or you can let others know, hey, I've got this, it's about to go. Who wants it or needs it? And so it's a way for you to actually get access to food from a restaurant at a much lower cost than you would normally, because they need to get rid of food. So apps like Olio or Too Good to Go are really great ways to rescue surplus food. So maybe someone did have a big catering order and they used only half of it, and now they've got a lot of food left over. It's a way for food sharing. Repair versus replace. So we talked a little bit about quality over quantity here. And so buying goods and thinking about goods that you can repair instead of tossing out a vacuum cleaner, a lamp, something like that, has actually the opportunity to make a really big impact globally on our admissions. So again, we're just trying to keep things out of the landfill and extending their life longer. And also, if you think about this, you're providing another economic opportunity for someone else with a job, right? To provide a service to you and of value. So how are we supporting that local economy as well? So try and go for repair versus replace. Stop wish cycling. Is anyone familiar with what wish cycling is? Okay. Wish cycling is of the best intentions possible. And we, all of us have been told we got to recycle, we got to recycle. Wish cycling is when you throw things into the recycling bin that actually aren't recyclable. You mean well, you want to help, like you think you're doing your part and stuff like that, but you'd be surprised at what can and cannot be recycled through your own like community waste management and things like that. So take some time to know your plastics. Look and see what waste management within your area, what they take and what they don't, and or different ways in which you can dispose of. There are lots of different places. Like I know UPS is really good at taking back styrofoam. You cannot put styrofoam in recycling. But when in doubt, I know this sounds awful, when in doubt, throw it out. And the reason being is when we throw things in our recycling bins that aren't actually recyclable, it costs a lot of money within that recycling stream for that recycling facility to sort through, and or it can actually contaminate maybe items that are recyclable. And so now that can't be. So know your plastics, stop the wish cycling. That can actually have a greater impact. Anything, I'm going to throw this out there too. Any coffee cups that have a plastic lining, though they're paper on the outside? No, sorry, can't go in there. That is not a recyclable good. Pizza boxes, be careful. Know where and when you can recycle those. So wish cycling. Plan, prep, and plant-based. This is all food. So when you're going shopping, plan ahead of time for maybe the week, 2 weeks at a time. What is it that you really do need? Meal plan and prep for that. Stick to a list. That's the best way to keep us on track and focused. I know if I have a list, it's so satisfying to check those things off, and I'm only going to stick to it. Prep. Know what you're going to have. It's always great to make a meal at home and thinking about what leftovers might be, and or food pathway planning. So like, I'm going to make this. If I have leftovers, what can I do with those leftovers to go into another dish or something else? So almost thinking about the life cycle of all of the ingredients that you're cooking with. First in, first out. Love that rule when it comes to food in the fridge. So how you even organize food at home in a pantry or in a refrigerator normally is how what you see, kind of what you're going to get. So first in, first out, whatever you got, make sure you're consuming that first before you go on to anything else. You'll help reduce food waste, things that go in the vegetable crisper drawer, make it visible so you know what you have. And if you have to go through and do a rearranging of your fridge, it can take some time, but you'd be surprised what you have in there. Oh, plant-based. Shifting to, I know we've heard, or maybe some of you have heard about meatless Mondays. Shifting to more plant-based diet, I'll be honest with you, I love meat. I love me a good ribeye. Like I'm not telling you here to go vegan or fully plant-based, but even just shifting and reducing the amount of, shifting your proteins of like red meat to plant-based for a day, doing that 1 day a week for a year, you actually have the opportunity to save the same emissions that are equal to driving about 348 miles. So like that's the emissions piece. There's also really great ways in saving water with just cutting back on meat consumption 1 day a week. So I'm not saying you got to go full in vegan here, but just cutting back by 1 day a week can do some amazing things for the environment. Number 16, when we think about reducing consumption for this year, one of the best ways to do that is in our clothes. So on average, we produce 81 pounds of textile waste a year individually, of clothes that get tossed, things that we don't want, towels that get tossed out, things like that. One of those ways to reduce consumption is to create a capsule wardrobe. So maybe what are some of these like 30 pieces that are your go-tos? And again, these are for quality. So we're looking to extend the life of an item of clothing and also in a way where it can be mixed and matched with multiple things. And so creating a capsule wardrobe is actually a really great way to reduce textile waste. And so we know these are quality items. So when it does also come time to maybe replace, instead of tossing, quality items do really well if they are donated into other areas or even upcycled, things like that. So they stay in our closets longer, whether it's my closet or someone else's closet if it goes secondhand versus going into the landfill. So reducing that consumption, also just thinking about how we can keep it out of the landfill. Number 17, think about shared resources. So neighborhood resource libraries are really interesting, and this kind of goes to the repair versus replace. An emerging trend is actually tool libraries. So if we think about things that we need to do around the house or at home, buying tools is expensive. And how often do you really use that tool, right? So the lifespan of that tool for maybe a project, a one-off project, we might use it just a couple of times. So tool resource libraries are really great investments. We have access to Wakerspace here at Wake Forest University. We also have an actual access to tool library here in Winston-Salem where you can pay a subscription and have a membership to and have access to. So this is a great way where you can also get education on maybe with the project that you're working on, but you're not having to invest or spend money on a tool that you're only going to use a couple of times. So resource libraries. And these can also be resource libraries, not just around tools, but other household items as well. This one's one of my favorites. So thinking about energy rush hour. How many of you have ever gotten into an argument with your partner, spouse about how to load the dishwasher? Anyone? Just, yeah. There actually is a correct way to load these things. Big items on the back and side, smaller on the inside. Believe it or not, a lot of the manuals that come with dishwashers will tell you what the best way to load them is. The best time to run them is one, when they are full. Same thing with laundry. But if you want to hit the best energy time, check out your utility providers' times of use. They actually will have reduced rates. And so that's the best time to run laundry and also your dishwasher. Just check out when those reduced utility rates are. They're normally in the evenings, like late in the evenings. And they can also be during times of the day when most people are at work. So check out when those times of use are to see what the rate is. And that's one of the best times to be the most energy efficient with your household appliances and using them. So run them when they're full, make sure you're loading them correctly. Same thing goes for a washing machine as well. For energy use with the dishwasher, don't do a heated dry. You don't need it. And actually your dishes will dry faster after they've been washed. You just need to crack open the dishwasher to let air flow in there. So it's a way to save some energy there as well. So then thinking about just leading by example, what are some of the things that we can do through our everyday choices and mindsets? A big one is just opting out of fast fashion. And now we're seeing it as super fast fashion. This has a big impact on the environment. Not only the quality of the clothing, not that great, which means it gets about 3 to 4 wears and then it gets tossed. And even these items that may get donated because you're done with it because they are so poor quality, they don't make it maybe more than 1 round, and then they're still going to wind up in the landfill. And so opting out of fast fashion is a really great way to reduce our consumption. Implementing a purchase pause. Sometimes we find ourselves in Amazon and it's just like, oh my gosh, I need this. Buying is easier than ever online. Buy now, really one-click buy, buy with Apple Pay, things like that. It's super easy to do. One of the ways to curtail that behavior is to put a pause on it. So what I mean by that is stick something in your shopping cart. That's totally fine, but leave it there. The rule is 72 hours. See if you can take 72 hours. And if you're still not like, oh my gosh, I have to have it right now, then maybe it's something to think about. What are those barriers into hitting that buy now, right? So just taking a pause. I've heard on some of the larger ticket items, I've heard a financial advisor who said anything over $500, you need to wait 30 days before you hit buy on. So something to think about. And if you really need to have it, are you that excited and passionate about it? Then maybe think about what it is, but try and implement a purchasing pause. Some people will even take, like on the weekends or a day, can I have a no spend Saturday or no spend Sunday? People have extended that into a week and even a month. What does it look like to not spend anything outside of, I need food? But those extra purchases. 21, how can we support regenerative agriculture? This goes to a little bit of the meat and food waste. Supporting, when I say local farmers, the ones though that we know that are embracing sustainable practices. Just because like here in North Carolina, sweet potatoes is like the big thing, right? So just because I buy sweet potatoes doesn't necessarily mean that it was farmed sustainably. It could be local, but that doesn't necessarily mean farmed sustainably. A lot of farms now are really great about sharing the information or practices that they engage in, but supporting regenerative agriculture, joining a CSA, so community supported ag group, where you get a box of, veg or meat from a local farm is a great way, again, to support local economy as well, keep those dollars within your area, but also knowing that that was grown responsibly. Commit to minimalist gifting. So again, we're stepping back from stuff and think about experience instead. So I'm not saying stop gifting altogether, but just rethink how we are doing it. How much stuff are you giving that's probably just being tossed or regifted somewhere else? So minimalist gifting. Experiences tend to mean more for the receiver as well. They could be shared experiences, and also even thinking about gifting, the packaging in which gifts and how you're presenting come in. Is there a way that you could wrap it with a scarf? Could you? I used to love this. My grandfather, and I know this was a Depression era thing, but would wrap things in the comics, like the colored comics from newspapers. And I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. So, and that was a recycled material. So how can we be minimalist gifters? Conscious consumption. How can we be a conscious consumer? So being aware of the systems that are in play, of where we're buying things, who might be impacted by them, what are the implications of like how something is packaged. Take some time and get to know about either the brands that you're buying from, who you're purchasing from, who you're doing business with, but be a conscious consumer. So think about where the things not only are coming from, but where are they going to go after you're finished with it? That's really peace. What's going to happen to it afterwards? Again, I said, there is no such thing as a way. It's just not within your immediate space. A collective contribution. Individual actions can feel really good, and we have control over those things. But coming together with others is where systematic change really happens. And so it's It's super important, and I don't want anyone to feel like, well, if I don't, it doesn't matter. If I'm the only one, it's not going to matter. It does matter, but it's even better if you can get more folks together. So again, find your people. Are there other neighbors that you have that might be interested in kind of this sharing economy amongst your street, or friends or things like that? So collective contribution, how can you bring others into this? Strength in numbers. And the last one really is about educating and advocating. So not only educating yourself on some of these practices and learning a little bit more about where things are coming from and what happens to them when you're finished with them, but educating others as well. So as you are on this journey to think about how can I be more sustainable, or the actions that you're taking, share that information with others, right? Like bring others along, get others excited about the things that you're doing. And then how might you advocate for those things as well? These types of mindsets, thinking about, again, getting involved in local groups. There are a lot of great groups, believe it or not, on Facebook that you can get involved with, on Buy Nothing, or there are here within the Piedmont Triad, we have the Piedmont Environmental Alliance, which is a really great group to get involved with. But find others or other groups that align in your interests, and how can you get involved and then share that, right? Even from local elections, state elections, policies within your organization. How can you get involved, and how might you advocate? And maybe how can you advocate through education? So these are just some, these are 25 of the ways that I think are really easy, kind of like foot in the door ways to get started and thinking about how you can be more sustainable. But again, the biggest thing is just, how can I reduce my consumption for this year? Some resources that I did want to share with the group before that we go is, if you are curious on learning more, a lot of these ideas or solutions, I recommend Drawdown. They're drawdown.org. They're really great at sharing how we can reduce our footprint and emissions for thinking about climate change, individual, but also organization. And also they've got these really cool job guides on like every job is a climate job. So rethinking on what you can do with in your role at work, whether it be from marketing, procurement, legal, things like that. So Drawdown's a really great resource. If you're interested in consumption, I highly recommend watching the Buy Now documentary on Netflix on consumer consumption. It's really eye-opening, but to see what different industries are contributing to, or the really intricate systems of consumption, right? And how can we help break some of those systems? And then thinking about, if for any of you who like podcasts, the Circular Economy shows by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, really great content. They also have a YouTube channel where I've learned that a lot of people now are starting to watch their podcasts instead of just listen. So you can watch or listen on YouTube or on like Spotify or Apple. But the Circular Economy show is really interesting, and they have series on food, on textiles and fashion, on just what's happening in the US, what's happening across the globe, on thinking more circular about how can we reimagine our current economy of take, make, waste, and introduce circular principles to how we operate in our products. But the big thing too is that you don't have to do all of these, and you don't have to do all of them at once. Try and think about, in making new habits, just try maybe one that you think might best fit for you, whether it be at home or at work, maybe with friends, and try and put it into practice, right? Just try one. That's all I'm asking for, is just one. And I think that's one of the best ways that you can get started in exploring more ways to be sustainable. And again, finding those people, talk about it and see what works and what doesn't, and maybe why. So those are the things that I was really excited to share with you. Just easy foot in the door ways for you to introduce maybe some more elements of sustainability into your everyday life this year in 2025. If you all have any questions, or I'm curious to hear from anyone, if you all have any things that you'd like to share.
Ashley, I feel so motivated. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, of course. I
Although,
do want to let you know, so these were for individual. I do have, I'm gonna just give you a sneak peek. I'm gonna send these out. So I have put together some 10 mindsets for organizations. So I focused on today more so individual actions, but there are some things as an organizational whole we can think about. And so some of the bigger like mindsets and maybe some starter actions that go along with those mindsets on how your organization can think about how it as a whole might embrace sustainability for 2025. And again, same thing with the personal actions. This isn't an all or nothing, right? Like try one, try two. Let's be mindful about what those are. Do they really align with our business and our strategy and the things that we do? And then how might we implement those and feedback loop? What else could we try or how do we scale those? So I'll be including that with this deck and also as a handout separately.
and we will also share the recording with you in case you'd like to watch this again.
Awesome.
But Ashley, thanks for your time. There's no surprise. You are one of our MBA alums. So of course, this was a fantastic session, but we appreciate your insights and your tips and your time today. So thank you.